What do you do when you're the best in the world and you realize you don't want to be there anymore? We're used to legends like Federer and Djokovic who stay until the wheels fall off. But there is a group of players who did the unthinkable. They climbed to the top of the sport and decided the view wasn't worth the trouble. So today, we're breaking down the 6 most confusing unfinished careers in history, from the burnout of Bjorn Borg to the wasted genius of Nick Kyrgios. But the whole story is building to a world number 1 who retired at 25, not because she failed, but because she did something much rarer. She finished the game. Let's begin with the Swedish player who needs little introduction. If you want to understand tennis endings that make no sense, you start with Bjorn Borg, because this is a man who sped run the entire sport, reached the very top, and then walked out just as he had taken the crown. Borg turned pro in 1973, won his first slam just a year later in 1974, and then he dominated an entire era. He went on to win 11 major singles titles between 1974 and 1981. That is 11 slams in 7 years. In the modern era, we worship longevity. Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, 2 decades full of arcs and perfect endings. But Borg's career was the complete opposite. So let's put Borg next to the most durable champion we've ever seen. Djokovic turned pro in 2003. He won his first slam in 2008 and is currently sitting on 24. If Borg had Djokovic's longevity and maintained his pace, he would have very likely surpassed Novak's 24 slams. But after just 8 years on tour, at the ripe age of 26, he retired. Borg stating that the travel and pressure were simply too stressful. Borg wanted control over his schedule, but the tennis machine does not love part-time participants. They want the stars at the big tournaments selling tickets. But Borg marched to the beat of his own drum, and so he left because the experience of being the superstar Bjorn Borg became heavier than the feeling of winning. Borg was the blueprint for the paradox, but if you want to see how that paradox fractures into 3 completely different tragedies, you have to look at Australia. 3 different players with world-class talent, but 3 entirely different ways of losing the plot. Bernard Tomic's story starts like a prophecy. At Wimbledon 2011, Tomic reached the quarterfinals at just 18 years old, the youngest man to do it since Boris Becker. And he lost to Djokovic. But making the quarterfinals at a slam at 18 is no joke, and the expectations from there are huge. Then the story flipped. And he didn't just stop his winning ways, he stopped trying to be liked. In a sport that demands grit, he gave fans apathy. He turned his career into a performance art piece about not caring, and in doing so, he became the first player to be retired by the fans before he actually retired from the sport. Nick Kyrgios, however, is the player fans have debated the most, but not for his tennis. Say his name and within 5 seconds, someone is either defending him like family or calling him the biggest waste in tennis history. Love him or hate him, you gotta give him some credit. The weapons are ridiculous. He has the serve, touch, and shot making that looks like he is playing a video game. And when he is on, he looks like someone who could beat anyone, anywhere. But the opposing case is even stronger. Careers aren't made from highlights. They are made from years of repetition, availability, and turning up even when you don't feel like it. It's about being a perennial professional even when no one is clapping. But opinions can only go so far, so let's anchor it with facts. Kyrgios reached a Wimbledon final in 2022, and his career-high singles ranking is number 13. He's beaten just about every player in his era that you would consider great. And by reaching a slam final, he's already cemented himself as having a good career. But it's not the career that one of the most talented players ever is meant to create. So what happened? Was it wasted talent, injuries, a weak mental game, or maybe a combination of all 3? Because your tennis skill is only the floor. Training and emotional control is what takes you to your ceiling. Now, let's zoom out, because not every unfinished career is due to the individual. Sometimes the body just can't keep up. One, Martin Del Potro embodied a greatness that the body couldn't maintain. Del Potro is one of the saddest what-if careers because the ingredients were obvious. He had one of the most devastating forehands of all time, and the weapons to be a multiple slam champion. But his career had a common cycle: surgery, comeback, setback, repeat. Del Potro had right wrist surgery in 2010. From 2014 to 2015, he had 3 wrist surgeries. Then from 2019 to 2021, he had 4 knee surgeries. The tragedy is not that he lost big matches, it's that he lost years, and tennis does not pause for anyone. Marat Safin was a player whose body kept up, but the identity lagged behind. Safin is the kind of player who could look unplayable, one of the most naturally gifted guys to pick up a racket, but the day-to-day discipline never looked like the center of his life. This is the uncomfortable part of tennis. The sport rewards the obsessed, the mechanical, the ones who can do the same thing every day for 15 years and not lose their mind. But Safin is proof that pure talent is not enough if obsession is missing. Safin still had an outstanding career, but there's no telling what he could have achieved with a Rafael Nadal-like mentality and focus. The next player's story is not quite finished, but a return to form seems less and less likely. Emma Raducanu shocked the world in 2021 by winning the US Open, where she became the first qualifier in history to win a slam. But since then, her results have all but dried up, not making it past a fourth round at a slam, and not adding any extra titles to her resume, which is peculiar in itself. She has one title, and it's the US Open. Granted, she's still young in her career, but at 23 years old, her game does not appear to be moving in the right direction. Now, onto a story that was not about collapse, injury, or mentality. It was about fulfillment. Ash Barty was the champion who finished the job and said sayonara. Barty retired in 2022 at just 25 years old, right when players are starting to enter their peaks. She was world number 1 and had just won the Australian Open, her home slam. The circumstance still does not sound real, because those are the moments that players live for. And in tennis, the moment you hit the top is supposed to be the moment you cling tighter. But Barty didn't care. She did the opposite. And given her dominance, what would her career look like today if she stayed on for another 5 years? Would she still be going toe-to-toe with the titans of the sport, winning slams, dominating like she did? We got to see a glimpse before her retirement. Against Sabalenka, she held an even head-to-head record of 4 wins, 4 losses, which looked like the beginning of a promising rivalry. And she was 2-0 against both Swiatek and Rybakina. So the numbers say she was not just winning, she was a nightmare matchup for the exact players who define the current era. Barty won 3 slams on 3 different surfaces in a short span, and she is still young enough that this was meant to be the beginning of a monster run. And if there's a stat that captures how dominant she really was, it's this one. Barty held the world number 1 ranking for 114 consecutive weeks. That's nothing short of extraordinary. So why walk away? That's the golden question. Because Barty's ending is not tennis taking something away from her. It is her deciding she already got what she came for. And that is the rarest ending in sport. She got to choose how her story ended. So what happened to these careers? Borg shows you that even a legend can burn out when the calendar becomes heavier than the trophies. Tomic shows you how fast a career collapses when the story turns toxic and there is no patience left. Kyrgios shows you that talent can win matches, but careers are built on something entirely different. Del Potro shows you what it looks like when greatness is real, but the body refuses to cooperate. Safin shows you that genius is not enough if obsession is missing. Borg left his legacy, Del Potro left his health, Kyrgios left his potential, but Ash Barty, she's the only one who took everything. She took the trophies, the number 1 ranking, the money, and the home slam glory. And then she walked out the front door while the lights were still on. She didn't leave because she was broken. She left because she won the game. Who do you think had the most what-if career in history? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy these deep dives, consider subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.